Welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Caps from Knightdale PD in North Carolina, 26th year in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Caps. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Paige. I really appreciate it. Yeah, 26 years, and it feels like it's been 26 days. The time truly has gone by in a flash.
It's amazing to me how it feels like life goes slow sometimes, but the best parts of your life seem to go by really quickly. It's like that old adage of like time flies when you're having fun. And I know when you and I talked offline a little bit, you love this career. I can see it. Like when you talk to me, you have this energy about you where I can just see that you have really, really enjoyed the last 26 years. And I was hoping that maybe you could give us a little bit of background into your why and your how. So, why you got started in law enforcement, how have the last 26 years looked like for you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I do love this job. It absolutely is a passion. It certainly is a calling. It's not a calling that I've always had on my life. As we were talking offline, I shared that coming out of high school, I was absolutely certain that I was going to be a teacher. In fact, when I entered into college, that was my goal and my pursuit. And interestingly, life gave me this opportunity to take a job with the North Carolina Department of Correction, now known as the Department of Public Safety, to work as a prison guard, as a correction officer. And I found that doing that job, I had a real interest in criminal justice and really had a desire to want to go out and actually serve in a different way in my community, engaging with people in my community. And so I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to go through the basic academy. Coming out of the basic academy, I was actually hired to work with a municipal department where I grew up, where I went to high school, where I had a lot of family roots. And that first decade or so with that organization really exposed me to so many different facets of law enforcement and just how this job does take us into situations where we can serve with passion and where we can answer that calling. And as I said, in a little over a decade, I had the opportunity to do so many different things. I was a police officer, a field training officer, a general and specialized instructor. I worked investigations and found myself actually being promoted into supervisory roles. And I never gave it a second thought that anything could be better than the circumstances that I had in front of me at that first job. And then a good friend of mine who was the director of the Law Enforcement Training Academy at the community college there in town took a position as an assistant police chief here in Knightdale. And he reached out to me one day and said, this community is going through some tremendous growth. The police department is going to experience a lot of this growth, and the police department is going to need to evolve. It's going to need to grow. It's going to need to branch out. And we really could use some experienced people to help us chart a path forward for this organization. So my friend Jason was his name. He sold me on this idea. He sold me on this notion to come and be a part of something special, to come and be a change agent in really taking an organization that had a healthy history and a close connection with its community into a new era. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and it was a little bit of a leap of faith. I didn't know exactly what to expect. I was certainly stepping out of my comfort zone and coming to a place where I knew I was going to have to make a lot of investment in building new relationships and getting to a place where people felt that they could trust me. But I brought the same level of passion and dedication with me to this career, or excuse me, to this position that I've had throughout my career. And we hit the ground running. I was fortunate to be able to go back to school, earn my master's degree while I was here. I was selected to go to the FBI National Academy as part of Session 257 back in the summer of 2014. And when I came back from that experience after being in Quantico for those 10 weeks with other police leaders from around the nation, from around the world, I was so excited to get back to my role where I was a division commander at the time. And in about a week's time, my good friend pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, look, I'm getting out of law enforcement altogether, and there has been some discussion about your interest in taking over in this role." And honestly, I was a breath away from saying no. I felt like I was still young. I had a lot more to learn. There were things I still wanted to do in my current role. At the same time, I felt like a lot of the progress that we had made was too important to leave to chance. What will that next man or woman do when they get here? What kind of ideas will they bring? How will it take us in a different direction? And not that some other person wouldn't have done a great job, but I really believed in the path that we were on. And so I had a lot of conversations with with my wife. I spoke to several of my mentors and ultimately decided that I may not feel ready for this, but I've kind of been put here for such a time as this. And so I said yes. And here we are 11 years later, and I'm still serving in this role. And it has been a life-changing choice. It's been a life-changing experience to serve the people of Knightdale in this capacity. And I think one of the greatest things about being in this role is just how much I've grown, how much I've learned about myself, how much I've had the opportunity to draw close to very important stakeholders and make decisions that I think were beneficial for our community, for our department, for our men and women. It certainly hasn't always been easy, but it's always been worth it.
Wow. I loved that intro. I really appreciate you sharing everything. And there's a few things I want to touch on for sure. So I'm going to try to kind of circle back to a few things. But one of the things that popped in my head as you were speaking is this real deep desire to make an impact on people's lives. And I had this conversation recently, and I had this realization within myself that I think everyone wants to get to the end of this life and look back on what we accomplished and feel like we did good and that we had a positive impact in one way or another, whether that's even the smallest impact. I think that we all want to feel that. We want to feel like what we did was valuable and we made a positive change and we had forward movement and growth. And one of my questions for you, and this might feel really, really random, but it goes back to your first role in corrections. And then you said that that role, after learning kind of everything that you did, you decided that you wanted to help in another capacity and you wanted to help within the community. Was there ever a thought where you were working in corrections thinking, I could maybe impact someone's life in a positive way that might change the trajectory of their life or choices before they get here? Was that ever kind of like a thought process for you? Because I come from, and I have not shared this with you, but I come from an incarcerated parent. He served a 6-year sentence for the sale of narcotics. And I've thought that to myself of it's almost like the butterfly effect, where like every choice you make impacts the next thing in your life. And I've thought about what if he would have made one different choice, or what if he would have had one mentor or positive influence, maybe that would have changed the trajectory. Maybe not, I don't know. But did you ever think about that of like, I can maybe make a greater impact in the community to try to help someone's life to not end here?
Absolutely. There were so many occasions where I would meet young men as a correction officer, in some cases even younger than I was at the time. And I would listen to them talk about their situation, and I would think to myself, I was like, That's one bad decision. It's one missed opportunity for someone somewhere to maybe plant a seed, make an investment of time to try to persuade this person to do something just a little bit different that may have changed the entire trajectory of their adult life.
Yeah.
And so that absolutely was a factor. I knew that being in that setting and seeing some of the things that I saw, hearing some of the things that I heard, that there was I won't necessarily say a better way to serve. What those men and women do in the correctional setting is important.
Yeah.
Uh, but I knew that there was an opportunity out there that I really needed to seize upon and I never thought of myself as a mentor, but maybe as a person that might have that opportunity to help someone else push the pause button for just a moment to have a deeper conversation, to share with them a different perspective, and so it absolutely did play into my decision to step away from serving in that role, to create an opportunity where I could go back into the community, and create maybe those touch points, those moments of interaction
Yeah.
that might steer someone away from that destination, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I really think that sometimes all you need is that one person in your life, and it doesn't have to be someone that you know necessarily, but it's that one interaction that could really change your life for the better. And I do believe that who you surround yourself with is really important, but how we treat each other is also really important because you never know how one thing that you say could change someone's life, and especially in your position, in public safety, you have those opportunities within the community to, set that example and to be that positive influence. And, I've thought about this a lot and I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast where, as a youth, because I was starting to like make bad decisions and I was, lost in a way with everything that I had gone through as a kid. And I didn't have positive examples. And I always have that, I wish that there was one person in my life that looked at me and said, like, you're worth it.
Right.
You could be something so much better than this, and you guys have the opportunity every day to do that and to be that source of inspiration and motivation for everyone. It doesn't have to be just young people, but I just had that experience as a young person, wishing that I had someone to set that example. And so you talked a lot about mentors and the importance of mentorship. Was there anything that you learned from your mentors earlier in your career that kind of stuck with you and influenced the way that you operate and lead today?
Yes, one of my closest friends and mentors shared with me a long time ago, that you should never deprive anyone of hope because it may be all they have left. And he added to that to say that, as you go out here and you're doing your job as a police officer, Lawrence, I want you to remember that you can bring a little bit of hope with you. You can create some of those opportunities to give value to people in a situation where they may not feel particularly valued. And those words resonated with me, and they've stuck with me all these years. And another mentor of mine, a pastor, as a matter of fact, talked about the importance of this work as it relates to my spiritual beliefs, and sort of echoed the same sentiment that you will never look into the eyes of a person that doesn't have some value. And it's important that, the way that you engage, the way that you behave, the way that you treat people is a reflection of the the value that they do have,
Yeah.
and the respect that you show to them. It's absolutely something that you've got an obligation to do. You've got a calling on your life. You've got an obligation to do those things as you engage and interact with people. Again, just bringing them hope, creating that engagement that shows respect, finding that opportunity to add value to the person or to the situation. And so I've tried to always hang on to those things. I can't say that I have always gotten it right 100% of the time, but it's been a driving force for many, many years.
Wow, that like really like impacted me because you're absolutely right that you can learn from everyone. Everyone has value. But also, like when you're in your hardest, lowest times, and a lot of times when you interact with the community, it's during like some of their most challenging times, right? People do lose hope. And if you that comment of like sometimes that's all you have left out of everything in the world is that like little sliver of hope. I remember reaching a point in my life, and it was one of my hardest times in my life where people had told me so many times that I would never amount to anything and that I wasn't valuable that you start to believe it, right? And so, like, the more people tell you certain things, the more you start to like buy into whatever they're saying that maybe they're right.
Right.
Maybe I'm not worthwhile. Maybe all I am going to amount to is this, or maybe I am just meant to be like my parents, or maybe, like everything, all these stories that these people are telling you because when you're surrounding yourself with negativity, which is what was in my life, all the people I surrounded myself, there wasn't anyone uplifting me. You start to believe those things. And if someone comes up to you and they look you in the eye and they say, you are valuable, and you are worthwhile, and I'm going to be that source for you. I'm going to fill you up, even though I have my own stuff going on, because you guys are carrying the weight of a lot of things, your own life, the weight of other people. And for you to walk up to a situation and say, you know what, I might not have a lot to give, but I have a little bit of hope that I can pour into you. What a powerful statement. And I think it is for anyone who's listening, a reminder that you have so much more um, ability to impact people's lives than maybe you think you do.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So you became a chief really early. I actually didn't even put two and two together until we were just now talking right before we hit record. And I was like, wait, how many years have you been in law enforcement? Okay, how many years have you been a chief? And you've been a chief now for 11 years. So you started off as a chief really early, really young in your career. And I know that you shared how much you've loved this role and how much you've learned about yourself. I have a two-part question for you.
Sure.
One is maybe share some of the things that you have learned about yourself and how you've been able to grow and develop within this role. But then also, I know that this role is extremely demanding. And so maybe some of the things that maybe are unique to being a chief that maybe you didn't know before and have learned is maybe a unique stress or challenge for this particular position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most valuable lessons that I have learned about myself is that I need to be surrounded with great people. I draw a lot of energy from being surrounded by great people, by people who are just as passionate, just as committed as I am to this profession and to the work that we do as police officers. And what I've discovered time and time again during some of the most difficult challenges that we've faced as an organization. I don't know that I necessarily recognized it in the moment going through it, but upon reflection, surrounding myself with great people, drawing close to great people, relying and depending on great people, actually served as a source of strength and encouragement and motivation for me. I can think back now over the course of my time as a police chief, and recall a lot of specific examples of where members of my command staff or my leadership team, even my officers, would come to me, during a challenging time that we were facing as a police department, and say something or do something that in that moment, it meant the world. And the more that I would reflect on it after the fact, I realized, it was those engagements, it was those interactions that really got me through that. when you're a young police officer, you think that the authority, the autonomy, the strength, the resiliency of your police chief is unlimited. And that's not true. We all have weaknesses. We all run into situations where our resiliency well is running dry. None of us are immune from the hard stuff in life. And so learning about myself, that idea that depending on other people is something that you have to do in this role. Yes, your position may place you at the top of the organizational pyramid. It's really the wide base of that pyramid, when done well, helps you excel and be the best that you can,
Mm,
uh, as the person at the top of that organizational chart. And so I really learned early on that it takes a lot of folks, around me, supporting me, encouraging me, for me to be the best that I can be. And the more that I can cultivate relationships that are built around that notion of trust and mutual respect, not just for our professional positions, but these levels of trust and mutual respect, and the from the personal side of things. Oh man, they have been wonderful over the years, and I've learned that about myself, that I need those relationships. They're so valuable to me. And not only do I draw a lot of strength from them, but sometimes they're exactly what I need in those darkest moments.
yeah.
I think maybe the second part of that question, I could best answer by maybe sharing with other people that might hear this, is that your police chief, your sheriff, your command staff, they experience such a burden in the positions that they find themselves in. And I don't recall the author of the book right now, but there's a book out there entitled "The Burden of Command," and it goes into a little bit of a deeper dive about the weight that comes with the position, the weight that comes with being in this role. And even though you read about it, and even though you hear people talk about it, there's nothing like being in this position and feeling the weight of that. You are not just trying to resolve problems and issues for a group of officers. You're not even trying to resolve problems and issues exclusively for your department. You're the chief law enforcement officer. You are the sheriff. You are that high-ranking official for an entire community of people.
Mm,
There's such an overlap of stakeholders, each with their own priorities and their own desires, and sometimes things are coming at you at all angles. And that's to say nothing of those situations where you're challenged by hard circumstances like line of duty deaths, or you're challenged by hard circumstances such as high profile events that bring unwanted attention against your department. And like any man or woman, you're dealing with all of the other stuff in life, on top of all of that. Your police chiefs, your sheriffs, they may be supermen and women, but they are not Superman. They are not indestructible. They are not immune from some of those things that even new line officers may sometimes face in terms of life's challenges. Um, I I think for me, just realizing that I'm not invincible, being willing to share with other people some level of vulnerability, hopefully gets them to thinking that, hey, look, I don't have to be I don't have to be this unstoppable, powerful figure to be in a leadership role. I don't have to have all the answers in a leadership role. And I'm certainly not going to do the things that need to be done for the department or for my community by myself. I need a strong team of people around me in order to be the best that I can be for the other people who are depending on me, and that group of people that depend on you in this role, it's a massive group of people. Like I said, lots of different stakeholders coming from lots of different angles with different priorities and perspectives. But you can do it, and you can do it well, if the passion and the motivation is coming from the right place, if the support structure is the way that it needs to be, and if you will, kind of step out of that mindset to say, hey, look, I am only human, and I can only do so much. It's okay to be vulnerable, to express some vulnerability, and to rely on other. Um, yeah, I know that's a lot that I said there in answering your question, but I think that those two answers are probably what come to my mind when you ask that question.
I really, really like that message because what I heard when you said that too is that it's not weak to lean on other people or to reach out to other people as resources. And it's actually really strong and courageous to step out and say, hey, like, I need some help here. Like, what do I do? Leaning on other people because it's not a solo mission. It's a team. And I think that is hard for people. I've had a lot of conversations over the years, and especially I think the higher you rise through the ranks, it's like you are almost expected to have all the answers and to do everything on your own. And you can't show quote unquote weakness or vulnerability because you have to be the one that has all the answers. And so for you to say, hey, like I'm gonna flip that on its head and actually say that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to lean on people. And actually, it's like quite necessary to be able to do that to move the mission forward in the most productive way. I also really appreciate that you mentioned that you also have life stuff going on, that you are also a human. And I think people forget that too, that yes, there's so much pressure of your career, but you also have home lives. Like you have families, you have other things going on. And there's an importance of being able to support the human. And,
Right.
we talk about like humanizing the badge and the human behind the badge and all these things, but I think that coming from you as, a person in leadership and at the top of your organization to say like, hey, I also need resources is such a huge message to everybody because I think it just takes like the weight off of like feeling like you have to do it alone. And we talked a little bit about this, and I know that there's more of kind of a push now for this idea of executive wellness and having, almost like peer support teams where you guys can talk to each other about stuff. And previous to that, I think the verbiage was always officer wellness or employee wellness, and then you totally forget about leadership and the understanding that you also need wellness. It's not exclusive to the role that you have within the organization. Every human needs those resources. So how did you balance that over the years? I know you said talking to people and leaning on people was something that you did, but were there any other resources that have helped you with your own personal wellness that now you maybe teach to the younger generation to be a little bit more proactive?
Yeah, I can't overstate the value of mentorship,
Mm,
um, the importance of identifying people that you can lean into for advice and insight. Good mentors have so much wisdom to be able to offer, and the best mentors in the world are the ones that are willing to themselves be vulnerable
mm,
and talk about how they got it wrong as much as how they came up with the right answers or how they did things the way. I was very, very fortunate to be able to latch on to some seasoned leaders and some great mentors, who are wise, and they weren't necessarily wise because they got it right all the time. They were wise because they were willing to learn from their own mistakes. They were willing to be vulnerable with me and sharing their flaws and the lessons learned, by getting it wrong, on occasion. And one of those mentors said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, Lawrence, smart people learn from their mistakes. He said, but wise people learn from the mistakes of others. And you've got to find a way as you continue to grow as a leader to share some of your mistakes, be vulnerable with your people. Don't just always try to go into a situation with the right answer. Sometimes sharing a story about what you tried, how you got it wrong, what you learned is the best takeaway that that young officer or that young police leader could have. And so for me, I'm constantly trying to share as much insight as I can. Yes, about things that have worked well. Yes, about, successes that we have had as an organization. Yes, about things that we feel like we got right. But I think it's also important in that conversation, again, with young officers, young police leaders, most especially, to say, find opportunities to tell the story about where you fail forward,
Mm.
where you made the mistake, and this was the lesson that you learned. We often forget the importance of seeing failure and missteps as an important teacher. We often draw from the successes and the things that we did well, but I'm a big proponent of finding those opportunities to say, hey, look, this is how I messed it up one time. Here's the lesson that I learned. And, that lesson sometimes resonating more deeply for, a young officer or young police leader, because again, it kind of gives them this idea that I don't have to be perfect. Perfection was never the standard. It's an impossible standard to meet. And here's my police chief. Here's the leader of my organization telling me, it is okay to make mistakes. It's how we respond to the mistakes. It's how we grow from the mistakes that's most important. And I hope that by being open about some of those mistakes and some of my own shortcomings, it will maybe plant a seed for them to do the same thing when they're having that conversation with that trainee down the road, or with that new officer in their own department, years from now. Again, this idea of just using the opportunity, using the position that you're in as an executive to help other people see that perfection isn't the standard. Here are lessons that we can learn in our failures.
Yeah, and it's not perfection, it's progress, right? And
Right.
you talked about that. Like, how can you learn and how can you keep moving forward and grow from that situation? And I had a mentor that said something very similar to me when I was first coming up in my career, and he he kind of gave me permission to like not always know the answers and be okay with telling people when you don't know.
Right.
And I think that that's really hard for people to kind of show um the humanness of like us maybe not being, like you said, perfect. And he said to me, people are going to respect you so much more if you're honest with them and you say, you know what, I don't know, but
Right.
I'll try to find out, or I'll let you know next time. Like let me look into it, let me find out. Then like trying to put on this perception that you are all knowing and super perfect. And I will tell you right now that if there is anyone that I come in contact with that gives me that where they're like, I know everything and I've never failed, I find that to be, personally, I find that to be completely unrelatable. And I actually don't really want to talk to that person. I want to talk to the person that's willing to have that self-reflection and that self-assessment to say, you know what, these are some things I did really well, but here's some things I didn't do very well. And then here's how I learned from that and I grew from that. And then here's my advice to you if you are in a similar situation. That to me is so much more valuable than someone that's just like, I'm on the top of the mountain and it was an easy ride, because then I'm sitting here looking at myself being like, wow, like I have failed and fallen on my face over and over and over again. And I keep getting up and
Right.
I'm trying to climb this mountain, but it hasn't been easy. And if someone just, standing there and they're like, what's wrong with you? I don't feel like I have anything to learn if they're not willing to learn in themselves. I don't know if that makes sense, but I have learned so much from my failures, almost to the point where now I'm not afraid of failure. I actually find failure to be inevitable. And I also think that failure doesn't have to be a negative context. Like, I think that it's like, we're always gonna maybe not be perfect or do the best the first time. We're always gonna like stumble a little bit sometimes, as much as we maybe don't want to. And in the moment when you feel like you didn't do a good job or you feel like you quote unquote failed, it never feels good. Like it's never like a happy thing. But I think after the fact, I always appreciate those times now because if I were to just feel like I was crushing it and doing amazing every single time and not learning, then I would be stagnant. And to me, stagnation is the worst possible scenario. I'd rather be, trying at least to make that forward movement.
Yeah, that's well said. I really like the idea that, and it's cliche, but the old adage that failure doesn't have to be fatal. It's so true. Uh, I, I I can think of many lessons that you really can't learn in life unless you experience setback, unless you experience some failure, unless you go through some mistakes. And so and you mentioned something else about failures being inevitable, and I think that they are. That's why they have erasers on the end of pencils, and it's why we have delete buttons and backspace buttons on our keyboard. Mistakes are inevitable. Failures are inevitable, but they certainly don't have to be fatal. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I had a moment, and this is kind of a sidebar, and I'll ask you a question in a second, but I was presenting at a conference. It was a, wellness, first responder wellness conference. And I was so, so, so nervous. And I was like, I had prepared and prepared and prepared like forever, and I was like just wanting to be the best and perfect. And there was a moment like in the middle where I felt like, I don't think that this is going very well. But like you have to kind of finish it, right? Like I was doing my best, but I think I let my nerves get to me. And I also think that like I was trying too hard to be perfect and people can probably recognize that. And there's some rigidity to it or whatever. And after the fact, they do assessments, right? They have like everyone within the conference do like an anonymous review.
Mhm.
There is nothing more humbling than getting anonymous, candid feedback on your performance as
That's true.
as a
That's very
person.
true.
And I probably had a meltdown for a while about this. And now I can look back and be like, that was my opportunity to understand like where I could have done better, but also to be able to like get back up. And I think that
Yes.
we we have to remember that that's the resiliency. It's like those moments where you're like in a puddle on the ground, like I can never show my face again because like how embarrassing, like these people had all these like really mean things to say. Um, and then to get up and do it again,
Right.
and like obviously you got to make some like adjustments and like try to be better. But,
Right.
now I've presented in a handful of presentations and you know, I could have let that moment be the end of it. I could have been like, never again. I'm never getting back up. I'm never doing that again, but to have those moments that remind you how strong and resilient you truly are, and that all you have to do is put one foot in front of the other, and like you said, fail forward instead of like letting that be the end of that forward progress. So I appreciate you saying that because I really have had those moments where I'm like, I can never show my face in this industry ever again.
Yeah. That's really
But here
good.
we are.
Most of the time, other people are going to forget about that stuff, and it's going to stick with us for a long, long time. Especially if you're the type of person that's driven and you want to be better and you hold yourself to high standards. But I think I've come to learn that most folks are going to quickly forget that. Um, far sooner than you let yourself forget about it.
And
Um,
they forgot they
but
even did the review. By the time they walked out the door, they weren't even, yeah. And we do
yeah,
think that people
off to
think
the next
about,
class, off
yeah.
to the next thing. That's right.
Yeah, we think that people think about us a lot more for sure. One of the things that you talked about a lot was, kind of setting the example as a leader and, showcasing these things. And when you and I talked offline, you were talking about wanting to create a culture where wellness is not taboo, it's normal. And I was hoping that you could maybe give your insights on why culture is so important and how you can create that healthy culture where people feel supported and they feel like it's okay to reach out for resources if and when they need it.
Yeah. So we start this conversation before officers ever come in and are officially a part of our organization. One of the things that we do as part of our hiring and selection process is a one-on-one interview with the police chief. And so, as I'm sitting down with that officer and I'm talking to them about the expectations that we have of them as they're coming into this organization. I also make sure that I spend a considerable amount of time talking about what they can expect from us. And a portion of that conversation inevitably centers on the investment that we want to make in them as the human being. And we can't be fully investing in our officers as human beings if we aren't demonstrating and showing that we have a genuine concern for their wellness. And it's not just, I want you to come in and I want you to be physically well. I want you to be mentally well. I want you to be emotionally well. I want you to be spiritually well in all the ways that you're a complex individual. Your wellness has tentacles or arms or legs, if you will. It's not just one aspect of you that we want to be at the highest level possible. We really want you to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. And so we have conversations about this idea of the organization investing in building a better person because we know that we will get a better police officer by default. If a person is truly the best that they can possibly be on that individual level, it's going to come out in the way that they do their job, the way that they engage with people in the community. And so we start that conversation very, very early with new people coming into the organization. Just letting them know that sometimes this job is going to wear on you. Sometimes you're going to be going through all kinds of things on a personal front that it's hard to separate from that when you're coming to work. And it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to be in a situation where you feel like you just got more than you can handle. And you know what else? It's all right to let us know about it, because the response that you're going to get from us is not the old rub some dirt in it and keep on going. The response you're going to get from us is, what do you need? What do you need right now? Do you need some leave time? Do we need to create an opportunity for you to have a temporary separation? What sort of resources do we have immediately available that we can that we can get you access to? And if you don't think that there is something that we already have, within our toolbox, so to speak, that's going to be helpful for you, what do you feel like you might need that's outside of that toolbox?
Mm.
Something that we may not necessarily have access to, but I want you to know that we're willing to go out and try to find it and get it for you, if that's what it takes. Again, making sure that you're the best version of yourself so that you can be the best version of that officer for that person that needs you in that moment of crisis. And so we start that conversation early. I don't go into too many details, but I do share kind of anecdotal examples with new officers of situations where we have made investments in other employees to help show, hey, look, we're willing to bend, we're willing to stretch, we're willing to flex. We truly do care about you being the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. And I think having that conversation so early on in the hiring and selection process, so early on as we're looking to cultivate that employer-employee relationship, is crucial. They need to know that yeah, there's an expectation that you're coming here and you're performing your duties and you're giving your best effort and you're adhering to policies and procedures. But they also need to hear that this organization recognizes that if you want a high caliber officer, you need to be making investments in ensuring that you got a high caliber person, and nobody can be the best that they can possibly be if you aren't doing everything that you can to make sure that those supporting legs of wellness that are underneath them are as sturdy and as strong as they can be. And so I think just creating the culture where, hey, look, it is fine to struggle. It is fine to acknowledge that you're struggling. It is fine to leverage these resources that we make available to you. That's what they're here for. That's why we invest so much in them. Oh, and by the way, if there's a resource that you feel like you need that we don't necessarily have right at our fingertips, let's talk about how we can get you exactly what you need. Because sometimes the cookie cutter things don't work. Sometimes the standard approaches aren't exactly what it's going to take to get that person to the best version of themselves. In the same way that your primary care physician can do a lot for you, sometimes you need a specialist. And the same is true when it comes to wellness. Sometimes there are standard things that we can do that will make a meaningful and a powerful, difference. But then there are some times where we need to call in the specialist. We need to, as I mentioned earlier, kind of think outside the box and be willing to go in whatever direction is necessary for the employee. And sometimes, that ends up taking us to a place where we get the exact kind of change that the person needed and that they were hoping for, and that ends up producing the exact kind of change and performance that we were hoping for. And sometimes, it helps us to realize that I may need to rethink what I'm doing in the career path that I've chosen. And I don't always see that as a bad thing as long as the person reaches that decision in a healthy way. Because whether they are a part of my organization or not, what I said a few moments ago rings absolutely true for every man or woman that has ever worked in this organization. I care more about you being the best version of yourself than I do about the title of the patch that's on your sleeve, or whether you choose to lay this career aside and go and do something else meaningful with your life. Maybe a lot of police chiefs and police leaders wouldn't say that, but for me, that's true. I need you to be the best version of yourself, and hopefully best version of yourself looks like a long and mutually beneficial relationship between the police department and you. But if being the best version of yourself is a realization that you've got to transition into another area of service, or you've got to transition into another career field, that's okay as long as you're okay. Again, maybe not everybody would say that, but it's always been my point of view.
Well, I think it goes back to what we said before about how like people also want to feel like they're valued as humans and as an organization. If you can not only say like, hey, we care about you as a person and we want what's best for you and we want, you to have all the resources and things that you need to thrive, but also like you kind of like had me feeling like when you're talking, like I felt like you were willing to fight for me. Like you were in my corner. Like when you're saying these things, and I think it's so important as a person to feel like you have people who truly want you to win, who are in your corner, who will fight for you, who've got your back if and when you need it. And maybe it's not today, maybe it's not tomorrow, maybe it's years down the road, whenever it is, like we got your back, and I think you do show up better for those people when you feel like they've got you and they
Right.
care about you and it's genuine. And I think that that has to matter too, that it's genuine and authentic. And it sounds like it is 100%. But I think that you as a person, we all can relate to this. You know, if I have a group of people around me that are like, we care about you, we've got you, we're going to fight for you, then I want to show up that same way too. Of like, okay, I'm going
Right.
to try to show up as my best self, and I also got you, and I'm also going to fight for you, and I'm going to do my best job for you. And it's this like synchronicity, it's this team mentality that starts to happen. And I think that um, that alleviates stress in itself because you have enough stress going on that you don't also need that additional stress organizationally. So when you can take that stress off and be like, no matter what, like we're here for you to get you the tools and resources that you need to be able to thrive. I think that that's really important. I know that when you and I talked, and I agree with this, and I was hoping that you could maybe give a little bit of your perspective. You related law enforcement to professional athleticism, professional athletes, in the context of, the expectation for performance. And I was hoping that you could give your insights on this. And then I might have a few follow-up questions because I've been thinking about this since last time we talked. But how do you draw like those parallels to professional athleticism and the law enforcement or public safety profession?
Right. This is something that has really intrigued me over the last few years, and in fact, I may end up being able to find a way to turn this into some kind of publication or something that maybe makes a huge difference for our profession. But I was having some conversation with some fellow trainers, and which subsequently led into some conversation with other law enforcement leaders about the way that our officers are expected to go out there and perform in the field is not much different than the way that we expect professional athletes to show up on game day and perform. You got these men and women in these professional sports arenas who have invested so much in preparing themselves to go out and to play a game at the highest level possible. And we think about, the amount of money that we spend on this as a society when we show up as a consumer on game day, if you will. Man, we're expecting them to give us absolutely everything that they've got, and kudos. Most of those athletes, they show up, on that field, on that court, in that arena, and that is exactly what they do, performing at a high level, game after game, day after day. And so it made me think about how we demand as a society that officers are showing up on those calls, in those situations, and that they are performing at that peak level all the time, every day, every call, over and over and over again. And I really began to see the similarities emerge there. And then as soon as the similarities emerged, I noticed a huge difference. And the difference being this: professional athletes are expected to provide that high level of performance, but regardless of what professional sport you are talking about, whether it's soccer, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, there is an end point to their season. There is a period where they are going to reach that end of service, if you will, that cycling out, where it's no longer about game day, it becomes about rest, recuperation, and preparation. And as law enforcement officers, we don't ever get that. It's constantly being on the field, constantly being on the court, constantly being in the arena, day after day, 24/7, 365. There is no off season for the police officer. There is seldom, uh, I hesitate to say never, but I'm going to say seldom is there the opportunity for the officer to step away from that peak level of performance to be able to get the proper rest and recovery that they need,
Mhm.
to focus on uh, getting ready for another season. There's seldom the levels of investment in training that there needs to be for all the things that our officers are expected to do in the society in which we currently live. And so it kind of occurred to me, man, wouldn't it be awesome if we were to approach the service delivery, the policing model in a similar way that we approach that notion of professional sports seasons?
Mm.
Yes, police officers are going to show up on game day and they're ready to perform at the highest levels possible, but we're going to identify a point where that service cycle comes to a close. We're going to wind it down. We're going to focus on the officers getting the proper rest and recuperation that they need. We're going to focus on the officers getting the proper critical incident debriefings that they need. We're going to focus on, officer wellness for a span of time. We're going to focus on officer preparation and training so that they can get ready to be the best that they can be going into that next season.
Mm.
I am not aware of a law enforcement organization anywhere in the United States that is thinking of it in this way. And I think that there are a lot of things, obviously, that make it hard and challenging to incorporate that type of service delivery model into law enforcement, because most law enforcements are part of government structures, and funding is limited, resources are limited, there's competing priorities, and all other kinds of things. But the more that I think about how impactful this could be for the profession and for the men and women who are a part of it, and then by extension, how powerful of an impact it could have for our communities, for the families of the officers. It just makes me want to go further with the questions, further with the research, further with the conversation and dialogue. What if we had a service delivery model that saw those officers performing at a peak level for a season, and then we're pulling them off so that we can focus on the right kinds of things and get them ready to go back into that next season and win another championship. That's an intriguing thought to me. What will it take to make it happen? I don't know, but it's something that really does consume a lot of my time and energy and thought about what would it take to make something like that happen. Even if it were in one place for long enough to kind of be able to study and follow that organization and see how well it's working for them, to identify what kind of success story that it could be, and then potentially, look at replicating it in other places. So I could
Yeah.
talk about this all
All
afternoon.
day.
We don't have the time, but I'm very intrigued at what that might potentially do for the quality of our service delivery and what it would do for the longevity of our people.
I agree that it's a really intriguing thought. And I also agree that, I mean, I don't know anyone. I've had quite a few conversations with, agencies across the country, and I've heard this concept of like sabbaticals,
Mhm.
of, taking like extended time off like every few years, where it's like maybe every 3 years or every 5 years, you're taking like 3 months off and, being able to kind of rest and come back in. And so I've heard of like some talks of that and people trying to, incorporate some sort of sabbatical program. But I really like the concept of elite performance and longevity. And I do agree with you that you guys are expected to perform at these really high levels. And what you said earlier is so true, though. It's like you also have this really difficult challenge of having to do this 24/7.
Right.
Shift work is so hard on your body and your sleep and all the things that are kind of those added challenges to what you guys are doing, but then also the expectation, arguably, would say is higher for you guys. Like if someone fumbles a ball one time, like maybe you're like, dang it,
Right.
but like you forget about it after a couple days, whereas, a mistake out on the streets is blown up for however long now in the media and all the things. And so I really like the concept of two things. One, how can we convey the messaging that all the training that needs to be done should be that of a high performing professional athlete? And if you look at the training methods of professional athletes, they're doing a lot of things, and a lot of it is wellness. They
Mhm.
are focusing a lot on mobility, which is something that law enforcement does not really focus on that much. It's one of those, I'll say, like, quote unquote weaknesses. You guys are like physically fit, but the mobility is lacking. And so then the injuries can,
Mhm.
increase. Professional athleticism really understands the importance of mobility and flexibility. And so they
Mhm.
focus a lot on that. They focus on balance and coordination. They focus on stability, so like stabilizing the body. They focus a lot on mental training, right? Because you have to be able to like mentally be able to handle the pressures of the game and to be able to perform at a high level under that stress and pressure. They also do a lot with recovery, like you said. Like there's a Netflix show that follows athletes, and there's so many times where I want to like record it and like put it on LinkedIn and be like, see, like look at like LeBron is doing this or whatever,
Right.
and, like,
Right.
and you see them, they're in like cryo chambers, they're getting massages all the time, they're working with, they have these like really high level teams that are working on everything,
Mhm.
not just the like specific skill set that you need to be able to, shoot the ball or throw the ball. I'm not a huge sports person, so hopefully
Sure.
I'm saying all things. So it's not just that, it's all the other things that create that well-rounded athlete, right? But then to your point, how do you have those opportunities that allow them to like get that perspective and be able to rest and recover and to decompress and be able to offload some of those things and then prepare themselves to be even better the following season? Because we know that if you are like constantly in the grind of things and you just feel burnt out and you're just so tired and you feel like you've been going forever, you don't have those like reinvigorating moments or those moments of introspection where you can sit and like almost like review tape, of
Right.
like,
Yeah,
what did we
absolutely.
do last season? Like, what did we do really well? Can we like review this tape a little bit and then figure out how we can do better for the following season? So I am intrigued by that idea as well. And I would be really interested to see if you or any other organizations across the country can make it happen with funding and staffing and all the things that I'm sure comes with that. But I would be really interested to see how that impacts longevity.
Yeah. And I think it takes one place committing to the time and the resources that it would take to put something like that into place. And whoever that organization is, whatever community, whatever department, whatever agency it is that goes first, I think they're going to reap some impressive benefits. And hey, look, I'd love for it to be Knightdale Police Department, but for the good of the organization at this juncture, it wouldn't matter who it was. It wouldn't matter where this initiative, kind of sprouted up first. I just believe in its value and its benefit for not just the profession, but I think for the communities that we serve. Um, Again, I think whatever place, whatever agency can go first on this one is going to end up seeing some pretty powerful impacts. I'm going to keep plugging away at it.
Yeah.
I'm actually coming down to the end of a strategic planning cycle for my organization, and so I'm trying to find some pretty clever ways of getting this introduced as a part of the next strategic planning period. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And certainly, if we have any progress on this front, I'll definitely keep you and others posted.
Yeah, definitely let me know. And if it's something that we can do, kind of like a follow-up conversation about how you did it and the success, because I'm sure you'll be tracking all of the metrics for ROI and how you're doing it. I think a lot of other leaders across the country would be really interested in really diving into the nuts and bolts of how you made that happen. So definitely keep me posted on that. I think that'd be great. I know I've taken more time than I asked, so I have one final question for you. And
No worries.
this is for the younger officer, someone who's just starting out. What words of wisdom would you share with them that maybe you wish you would have known earlier, or something that's helped you along the way that you want to pass on to them?
I think if I could go back in time and talk to the younger version of myself, I would say to that guy the same thing that I would say to any younger officer or younger police leader in this career field, and that is to recognize that this is a marathon. This is a long journey ahead of you. It's going to go by faster than you think. So make sure that you are assessing daily what the right priorities are. And as you're assessing what those priorities are, and you're thinking about the balance between family and work, and you're thinking about the importance of retaining your old friends and hobbies as you take on this new life of service to other people, somewhere in that list of priorities, um, there's got to be space for you. There's got to be space for an investment in yourself. You're going to give and you're going to sacrifice much for other people, people that you don't even know, and it's a noble thing. It's an inspiring thing, but at the end of the day, you've got to make an investment in yourself as a person. Take care of yourself. Don't take your health for granted. Don't take your youth for granted. Don't waste a whole lot of time on things that aren't going to produce a positive result for you, for the people that are closest to you. Carve out time to take care of yourself. And that's a lesson that I wish I had learned earlier on in my career. I'm always going to be young. I'm always going to be energetic. I'm always going to have the ability to do these things. And the reality is that's not always the case. And then life's going to throw different priorities at you with marriage and family and your parents getting older and having to take care of them in a different season of life. And if you really want to shine in the best ways possible in all of the arenas of life that you're going to find yourself in, it's going to be important to take care of yourself. And I think the way that I could best encapsulate this, and I've got this written down on a little laminated card on my desk, and it says this: thinking of yourself first isn't the same thing as thinking only of yourself. And
Mhm.
sometimes you really do have to put yourself first, especially if you want to be that person that other people know that they can rely on. I want to be that person that other people know that they can rely on. And so, it helps me to realize that if I want to be that, I've definitely got to invest in this guy. I got to invest in this guy's wellness. Um, that'd be what I would offer to myself at 22 years old, coming into this profession for the first time, and maybe what I would share with other young officers thinking of entering the career field.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I have really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate you spending the last hour with me. And um, that's all I have for you. But if I missed anything, or if you want to say anything else to kind of sign off, I'll give you the floor. But again, thank you for everything.
Just to say thank you as well, Paige. I really appreciate the opportunity and the platform. Thank you for giving me some of your time. Time's a precious commodity, and so I'm grateful that you shared a little bit of yours with me. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.